Welcome guys to another GSL Code S round of 32 recap video. SCMothership checking in to let you know how the games between SK Telecom T1 Parting, KT Rolster MyuNgSiK, Jin Air Greenwings True, and CJ Entus Bbyong played out. This is going to be another chance to see whether there'll be any Terran representation in the round of 16, or only Protosses and Zergs with Bbyong contending tonight. The first series of the night was a PvP between one of the strongest players in all of Code S, a legend, Parting against MyuNgSiK, a relatively new up-and-comer who has shown his potential. Beginning on Frost, it's a large map, so we don't see anything too aggressive, and both players just mirror each other until Parting decides to go Stargate for an Oracle, and MyuNgSiK gets a Twilight for Blink. Parting, after the Oracle, then heads straight for the Twilight himself. The Oracle doesn't get too much damage done, but does scout. Parting tries to expand as well, but MyuNgSiK applies adequate pressure and forces him to cancel. With Blink completed, Parting then takes his expansion while MyuNgSiK begins DT tech and expands himself while trying to get his immortal count up. Although Parting has lost his Oracle, he gets a Robo and pressures MyuNgSiK with the higher count of Stalkers as the DTs begin to enter his main, even getting the one necessary immortal of MyuNgSiK. With an observer just finishing, all three DTs get killed, and with a huge economic disadvantage, MyuNgSiK taps out knowing he has been checkmated. Yansu is the arena of choice for MyuNgSiK, and Parting with wind beneath his wings goes for a cannon rush which MyuNgSiK does not get a read on until the cannons are being built in range of his nexus. Instead of trying to stop the cannon rush, MyuNgSiK decides to get as much use out of his base as possible, expand to his natural, and just sack the main. Unfortunately, a few control blunders with the units that MyuNgSiK sent out to the main of Parting and a ton of lost mining time, MyuNgSiK is in no condition to continue on, and MyuNgSiK GG's out after losing a third stalker that should not have been lost. Alright, now we get to one of the few TV anythings we have gotten to witness in the round of 32. A TVZ between Bbyong and True. So, starting the series out, we see a pretty standard start. Just like in some of Supernova's games, Bbyong starts out with a 3 Reaper expand into Reactor Hellion and a fast 3rd CC. Pretty standardly, our Zerg True goes hatch, pool gas, and defends the early Reapers and sets up his own 3rd base. The mid game as well is pretty tame besides a nice Link surround and a Banshee killing a Queen, and we see both players setting up for the aggressive late game. True showcases some nice early muted micro while Bbyong sets up a pretty wicked MyuNgSiK push. While pushing out, Bbyong looks like he's gonna be surrounded, but an even more disjointed True almost costs himself a lot of units, but he does buy himself some time. Leading out with the Marauders during a crazy strong parade push, Bbyong is able to eliminate most of the defensive Banelings, and being 40 supply up knocking on True's base, Bbyong is able to take a dominating game number 1. Now on to the largest map of the map pool. True goes hatch first into pool while Bbyong oddly sticks to a 3 Reaper opening, not opting to go for a more economic CC first. Using the same build, Bbyong tries to deal a bit of pressure to the 3rd, but as happens to many Terrans, he gets part of the Reaper Hellion force surrounded. True, feeling he just must have made some crucial mistakes last game, goes for the same late game muta play while Bbyong goes up to the same 9 barracks and looks like he just wants to put on again another massive MyuNgSiK push. Again, the muta control is superb out of True, and with a larger map, this gives True more time to defend the push, which he does, and pushes Bbyong back all the way to his 3rd and forces Bbyong to GG out. Now, the final map of the series to determine who will play against Parting is on Yansu, Bbyong's pick. We see the exact same openers to a T, neither wanting to budge on what they feel comfortable with. The Reaper control is absolutely off the hook this time by Bbyong, but you can't really get too much for it. And again, we see a fast 3rd with Reaper Hellion push as True gets his 3rd and joins the 3rd with the natural. This time though, True decides to counter with his first group of Lings, which means he will not save his 3rd. He does, however, remove a ton of SCVs from the low ground. The group of Hellions used to pressure True afterwards also gets surrounded, putting Bbyong in a terrible position for the late game, and allowing True to drone up. Even creeping Bbyong's 3rd delays him further. Attacking 2 locations at once and joining together the natural of Bbyong, True's Ling Bailing force proves to be too much, and Bbyong moves down to the losers matches, meaning the chances of having any Terran advance to the round of 16 are slowly diminishing. Now for the winner's match, Parting versus True. At PvZ, we start out on Altrazim's Stronghold. As is typical with this large map, both players play very greedy and play for the later stages of this game. Faking out True with a pile, and Parting tries to pressure True while taking his third, but True does not take the bait. Parting then again does a similar move out just before mutas are out, then recalls perfectly before getting surrounded, doing a little bit of damage and this time forcing some units out. The mutas though get out, and on this map Parting decides that the best defense is a good offense and pushes out with his Stalker Ball. Even with the best force fields, his Zerg might is too strong, and with no Stargate, Parting gets crushed. Habitation Station comes up next, and we see True being super greedy, going double hatch before pool on a relatively smaller map. Parting in response gets his own gold and may be considering powering off his own 2 bases to punish the greed of True with the Robo. True though also has aggression in his eyes, and with a ton of roaches tries to take advantage of Parting's split bases, pressures the main heavily and deals some good damage, and even surrounds units reinforcing. Immortals and Sentries making this game bleak for the Protoss. True keeps ramming his head into Parting though and begins to leech a bunch of units. He doesn't actually get too many probe kills, and he never really takes out key tech structures. Parting eventually stabilizes and gets up to 3 Immortals, while True has been sticking to Roach Lings while just now getting a Spire. The countering force out of Parting is insane, and with the gold base helping out, True decides he needs to buy time, sacrificing a lot of units to do so. And with the ragtag force, True knows he cannot engage directly and goes for the base trade. While it becomes incredibly close, True having mobility, Parting eventually cleans up his main and finds the last base of True to take the win. On Daedalus Point, Parting goes for an aggressive cannon rush while True takes Parting's natural and his own third as his second base. True lets his proxy hatch finish, but not a single larva produces anything as the cannon targets them all. The creep though does remain for quite a while, and True gets his third up to the north, putting True in a decent position after the cannon rush. Having seen the sneaky third, Parting opts for a 4-gate +1 attack that gets deflected just in time. In response, True continues to produce units while heading up to lair and forces Parting back to start his third very late as the fourth and mutas of True are completed. Again with another massive attack, Parting shows his amazing decision making. Being behind, Parting knows he must do damage now, so as a huge Roachling counter assaults him, he moves up into the natural and main of True, killing the lair and Spire for almost no army loss, while True, ignoring the third of Parting, breaks through the wall of Parting. Parting then recalls, and only having lost his cybernetics core and other mineral buildings, handles the counter without too many actual game-determining losses. True has been set back heavily and tries to find his place in this game, but in a haphazard final engagement, he gets split apart and Parting just absolutely demolishes him, meaning Parting will be the first player from the group to advance to the round of 16. Okay, now for the losers match, see if there is any chance for at least one Terran to move on to the round of 16, or if MyuNgSiK will advance on to face True for his shot. In game 1, we see both the Nexus first and the CC first, since it is Altrazim Alter. MyuNgSiK then goes for a Stargate Oracle, while Bbyong goes for a fast CC and, being safe, scans and sees the Stargate and puts up turrets. Having map control, our Protoss player then decides to take his own third and getting himself up Colossus tech, which Bbyong, while building up his own bioproduction, scans and sees. MyuNgSiK, playing uniquely as he does, adds a second starport for Phoenixes that will help with drops and protect the Colossi, which he hides for a long time at the common drop position to the north of his natural. Bbyong keeps scanning the army and knows something is fishy, and having added in a good number of goats, start producing more Vikings, 4 at a time to be exact. Bbyong, noticing a lack of high Templars, although against 7 Colossi, feels that pulling the SCVs is the right choice. Getting a nice surround, but without micro and even into time warps, Bbyong is barely able to take the third and fourth of MyuNgSiK. MyuNgSiK being too far behind, Bbyong has rebuilt his economy and heads out for a game-winning push. Now on to Frost. With Terran up one game, we see neither player playing too greedy. Bbyong going for a Reaper expand, MyuNgSiK doing a 1-gate expand himself. This game though gets interesting because Bbyong gets a reactor factory producing 2 Hellions, then gets a pair of Widow Mines out while MyuNgSiK gets a Robo. A nice pressure out of Bbyong, gets a few probe kills and a scout of the main of MyuNgSiK as well. The game stabilizes though, and MyuNgSiK heads up to Colossus, but includes a War Prism while Bbyong gets a pretty standard bio army. With an observer out, MyuNgSiK moves in with the Zealot drop just as Bbyong moves out. This showcases the potential of both players as Bbyong micros away from Zealots that MyuNgSiK picks up and tries to drop on top of the Marines, but Bbyong deflects skillfully. With neither player's aggression being too effective, they both tech up, and once again as the third bases get ready, and right as Storm can get out, Bbyong pulls his SCVs to try and break MyuNgSiK, and looks so close to pushing through, but this time MyuNgSiK saves his third, but loses a lot of expensive units. Trying to make this aggression work, Bbyong tries to keep poking at MyuNgSiK, but eventually he pushes it back, and MyuNgSiK forces a final engagement with more pulled SCVs as he takes his fourth, and MyuNgSiK is able to tie up the series and take game number 2. Now the final match of the series, one of the last chances for Terran in the GSL. It is up to Bbyong to win on Heavy Rain. We see Bbyong sends out an SCV quite early. With gas, this implies proxy Reapers, and MyuNgSiK scouts around a little bit but doesn't get wind of it until he enters the main of Bbyong. 3 probes get taken out and Bbyong only commits to 2 Reapers and gets his natural, giving Bbyong a slight lead. MyuNgSiK does expand and then heads up to Twilight and gets Blink, indicating an all-in. With a nice Reaper scout though, Bbyong does see this coming and MyuNgSiK decides not to commit to the attack, instead tacking up to Robo. Since Bbyong had to spend resources of bunker and defense, Bbyong decides it is his turn to be aggressive with drops and gets shut down pretty quickly though, since MyuNgSiK actually hasn't even taken his third either. Adding on more gateways with a few Immortals and getting Colossi out, MyuNgSiK looks set up for a new all-in, but then just takes a later third than Bbyong. Completely maxed out, Bbyong goes for a wise SCV pull with no Storm out for MyuNgSiK and only 4 Colossi, allowing Bbyong to obliterate MyuNgSiK, and that means he will move on to face a rematch against True. One of the last chances for potentially having one Terran in the GSL round of 16. It is up to True, the Zerg player, to fend off Bbyong, the man representing Terran. A rematch between these two. Will Bbyong be able to take game 1 on Heavy Rain? As expected, we have a Reaper expand out of Bbyong and a hatch first from True. This time though, Bbyong decides to get a Cloak Banshee to follow up the Reaper Hellion push. As Bbyong moves out, he's able to get some drone kills, but True tries to go for a link counter push that gets through the natural, kills a ton of SCVs and puts Bbyong on the back foot for game number 1. Bbyong stabilizes though and starts to go mech against the Mutaplay of True, and with double Cloak Banshees, True is not prepared with Spores and takes some damage himself. Mixing in Thors and Hellbats, we see True setting up for Swarm Host play, which means most likely we are in store for a very long game as True gets his 4th base as well. Without any siege tanks though, Bbyong defends barely long enough to get some out, facing a sieged up Zerg outside his 3rd. Bbyong, with some nice Hellion harass though, makes use of the immobilized Zerg, to which True only has a few Mutas to defend with. True actually gets 35 Swarmos, but only pressures from the low ground choke point, so Bbyong is able to force True to move to another location, sieging at the high ground. Splitting up his mech army, Bbyong is able to start killing bases and forces True back with his Swarm Host. Eventually, against essentially pure Swarm Host, Bbyong is able to take the main of True and 5 bases of his own, and strangles True with a full mech surround, allowing Bbyong to take a drawn out game number 1. Now, potentially the final match, we head into the massive Ultrazeme Altar, and we see both players getting their 3 bases very quickly. Skipping over the early game stuff and heading straight into the mid to the late game, we see Bbyong makes reactored Blue Flame Hellions against a mainly Ling composition, but True sees it barely with an Overlord, which immediately prompts out a Roach form. The Hellions get into the main and kill over 50 Lings, but aren't able to get a single drone kill. True makes a bunch of defensive roaches and gets Mutas out with a 60 supply lead as well. Bbyong tries to get a snipe on the 4th base of True, but with Lings in position, he quickly backs out. Bbyong secures a 4th with neither player's aggressions being very effective at all. Bbyong, maxing out, begins a large push against the nearly pure Baneling composition of True and gets caught out just before entering creep and has to make a hasty retreat. True counters by dealing some damage to the 3rd of Bbyong, while one of Bbyong's drops gets screened and the other kills the backdoor natural of True. Against the macro of True and with an abnormally large amount of Banelings, True sacrifices a lot of units to deal more damage to the 3rd. True, however, has never actually scouted the 4th of Bbyong and keeps using Banelings inefficiently, and Bbyong begins to quickly take the supply lead. Another counter push at the 5th of Trap takes out the base, leaving True with only 2 mining bases since the natural keeps getting dropped and destroyed by Bbyong. Now 60 supply up, the Bio Mine and Thor push of Bbyong sets itself up on creep at the 3rd of True, and Bbyong will win, and Bbyong will be the first Terran and maybe the only Terran to move on to the round of 16 in the GSL Code S. Well, it happened. Terran will advance, Bbyong going 2-1 and Parting going 2-0, while unfortunately MyuNgSiK is going out 0-2, along with True, who is not able to win his rematch against Bbyong, dropping out 1-2. That is it for Group E. Please remember, if you want to catch the games live, to check out twitch.tv/GSL, and to also check me out personally at youtube.com/InfestedMothership. Like always, SCMothership checking out. Peace.